Thank you. Hi,
Hi.
I'm so excited. Thank you for being free and available to do this for myself and for my peers, especially. My name is Linda Camille. It only says Linda at the bottom, but I go by Linda Camille. I'm a senior here at Georgia Southern. I've been a film major the whole time I've been here. I've taken a lot of Professor Gossamer's classes, and I'm really grateful to him for connecting me to you to learn more about the strike. I have personal aspirations of being a writer. That's what made me switch my major from psychology to film.
Great.
Um, as a senior in high school, thank you to Professor Goswan's red pen. It has been refined greatly over the past 3 years. So I am beyond grateful to you for taking this time to speak to myself and the other people that will see this.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer questions. And, it's been really interesting and on some level, like surreal and unusual to be in the midst of this action that's been going on now for, more than 120 days. I think we're 120 something at this point, 122, 127. I can't remember exactly what it is, but yeah, it's been a real, challenge, adventure, experience, and it's continuing. And I'm happy to tell you guys everything that I can about it.
Well, thank you. First, who are you to the writing world?
Yes, great. I'm Steve Harper. It's a really good question. I'm Steve Harper. I'm a television writer as well as a playwright. In the world of TV, I write TV dramas. So I'm originally from New York, but I've been out here in Los Angeles since 2010, and I've written on 6 television shows. I spent 2 seasons on a show called Covert Affairs for the USA Network. I wrote on American Crime, which was on ABC. I was on a show called Tell Me Your Secrets, which was on Amazon. We actually made it for TNT, but it ended up on Amazon. I spent a season on God Friended Me and 2 seasons on the CW show Stargirl. And am currently on, except we're striking, on a show called Tracker, which is a new CBS drama about a guy who finds missing people and things, starring Justin Hartley, who used to be on This Is Us. And we were in the middle of working on that when we went on strike.
Okay, thank you. So my first question is, can you just explain the strike overall? A lot of people are going to start being affected by it that aren't in the industry, that have asked me to explain it, and I don't have the verb to.
Yes, well, I can understand that because on some level that's complicated in terms of all of the details, but also on some level it's simple. Basically, it comes down to money. It comes down to the fact that television writers and screenwriters really deserve to be paid more because of cost of living increases, because of keeping up with those numbers and the way our society has evolved, but also because of streaming and because of the ways things are now distributed and sold to people in the streaming model. I'll talk about the specifics of how that works compared to the way it used to work in regular network television. But essentially, writers are making less money today, and more writers are making less money. Even top writers at the end of the day are making less money. And there's so much more content. Like we're in this age of, proud to say, peak TV, and people are talking so much about the streaming model and about what they're watching and all these water cooler conversations. And it's a really exciting time for things that are being made. But because of the way they're being made, people are getting less money to make them and having to put together, get more jobs in a year to make ends meet, fewer residuals. It's a real problem for the middle class writer, the middle class writer is disappearing. And people want to, we want to make a living and also ensure the future for other writers so that they can, the people who are sort of coming up the ladder, that they can also make a good living as a TV writer. And one thing I want to say about that is that we're making material that not only is popular in the United States, but all over the world, people are watching our content. So I think we deserve to be paid a living wage for that.
Adequately.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So you made a comment within what you just said about it's the way things are being made. What does that mean?
Yeah. So where to begin? So, okay. So first of all, back when I was growing up, there was only network television, and there was no cable, and there was no streaming, right? And so, and network television still exists today. The show that I'm on is a network show. So that's like ABC, CBS, NBC, that sort of thing, which are, I mean, today you have to, some places have to have cable in order to get those basic channels, but those channels used to be free. And that television is basically, that television, network television, can be seen for free, as opposed to subscribing to a cable channel or subscribing to a streaming service. In the network model, there were a couple of things that were different and that are different. First of all, there are, let's say, a regular season of network television, certainly for a drama like the show that I'm on, and many shows like it, 22 episodes is the norm, right? So that's a lot of episodes that, will air from, September straight through May. So 22 episodes, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of weeks to make that amount of work. For every one of those, for writers who are on those shows, you get a weekly salary, number one, which is great. If you get a script to write, if you're assigned a script, you're going to get a fee for that script. Now, that has been true for everybody but the lowest level writers. And we're hoping that that'll change. It's one of the things that we're asking for the future. But most of the time, the lowest level writers don't get a script fee. But most of the writers do. So you get a weekly, you get a script fee, and then once that show airs a couple of times, then if they rerun it, which depends on like how many times they have, they can run it, I think, once or twice in the regular cycle, and then there's what they call a rerun. If they rerun it, you get a residual. You get a payment for them rerunning the episode that you wrote. Then let's say they decide, you know what, we like this series, we're going to sell it to American Airlines. When they sell it to American Airlines, another residual check comes, and that's good for a writer like me. Then they say, well, you know what, now we're going to take it to syndication, which essentially means that, smaller markets around the country might, on some off channel be able to watch this particular show, and they're going to sell it to syndication to be seen on, whatever it is, channel 5 or 11 or whatever it is in your hometown. And for that, we'll also get another check. And then maybe it'll go to cable, another check, another residual. And then maybe it'll go to, a streaming service, and another check, another residual. Then, maybe there's a DVD sale in there, or a Blu-ray, and once they put out the DVD and Blu-ray, then we get another check. So that's a way that writers, middle-class writers, average writers, make a living as a TV writer, because not only are you being compensated for the work that's been done, in the creation of it, but when it gets used and this company that has produced it is also making money, we get to share in that, which is only fair. So today, that is still happening, but only for the network shows. So if I were to be on a show that was created for Netflix by Netflix, I would get, first of all of those streaming shows have lower price points. So I would get a weekly salary that's less than the weekly salary I would get on a network show. I would get a script fee that's less than the script fee that's on a network show. And then basically that's it. If I create a show for Netflix, it goes to Netflix and lives on Netflix theoretically forever. Doesn't get sold to American Airlines, doesn't get syndicated. There is no Blu-ray or DVD. There is no, it's not going anywhere, right? Mm-hmm. And whereas there is, I believe, a residual that does happen down the line, it's a very tiny amount. And so that makes it harder, to earn a living if I went from being on a network show with 22 episodes and all of those residuals to being on a streaming show that has, fewer chances for me to get paid, smaller price points, but then also we'll only have, say, 6 episodes or 8 episodes or 10 episodes. And so then it's harder for me as a writer to make a living. I'll have to put together several different Netflix shows, or a Netflix show and an Amazon show, in order to begin to, come close to making what I used to make on one season of a network show. And that's what's happening. It's harder and harder for people to make a living. And that's one of the things that we want to prevent by, again, making sure that people are paid what they're worth, and compensated well for the work that we get to do, that are making these companies billions of dollars.
Yeah, so that was my next, is the pay less because there's less money going around, or is it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So back in the day, the last time the Writers Guild went on strike, which was in 2007, one of the things that keeps happening is every time there's new technology, the next negotiations are about that technology. And when streaming came about, at the time in 2007, they were calling it new media. And nobody knew what new media was. What is this new media thing? Like, will it be big? Will it be small? And the AMPTP, that's the Association of Motion Picture and Television Producers, and those are the companies that we're negotiating with. Those companies, they often have the narrative when there's new technology that the new technology isn't going to do anything, right? So back when it was DVDs, or back when it was VHS even, they were like, oh, this is not going to be much. Like, we can't, there's not a lot, we shouldn't pay you a lot because it's just so experimental. So that was the narrative way back when, that this new media thing wasn't going to be much. And so they effectively negotiated lower rates for things in the world of new media. Now, new media has become streaming. Streaming has become huge. And we're talking about, all of those rates need to rise.
Come up, yes.
Yeah, because it's basically like now everybody in the world is watching shows on streaming, but the pay scale hasn't grown with the technology.
Okay. Well, thank you. I don't even have cable as a young adult. Like, I bought an Amazon Fire Stick and just ran with it. It didn't even occur to me when I came to college that I didn't have access to like local news or network television anymore.
Right.
That's just gone. Despite having grown up with it. And I'm sure my youngest sister is not familiar with things like CBS. And so that the idea that streaming wasn't going to be as big as it's become makes sense, that this is how we've gotten to this point. And so my next question is, at what point was it just enough? Like, the writers were like, we can't keep doing this. Something needs to.
Well, that's really what's happening right now. So we went into this negotiation, in April, and there was a back and forth, and very clear demands that we set forth, and the AMPTP wasn't budging. There were several things that we were asking for to increase compensation. Some of those things are, you may have heard about, minimum sizes for writers' rooms, so that you can have a certain number of people sort of in the trenches working on a show. It really takes, creating television is really a collaborative art. So I think you really need to have, a group of people, and a lot of these streaming shows, the companies, their model is, well, let's get fewer and fewer and fewer people. So again, they don't have to pay as much, right? So there were a number of different things that we asked for and have demanded. And on many of them, the AMPTP just didn't give a counter offer. They were just sort of like, yeah, no. And in the face of that kind of intransigence, that's when, we had a strike authorization vote, they call it, and it got 98% approval on our strike authorization vote. And so, we decided on May 1st that we would go on strike when the contract ended at midnight, and on May 2nd we were on the picket line.
Wow. So that's first of all such like a quick turnaround. How does your day-to-day look different?
Yeah, completely different. So when I was day to day on Tracker, working on that show, the writers' room, we have 10 writers in our writers' room. We have several assistants, and we work out of offices at Fox Studios, which is about 30 minutes from my house. So I would drive to the studio and I would be there. We have to be in the writers' room at 10, and we would be there all day till 5 o'clock. We stop in the middle for lunch, and all day we're breaking story, talking about the next episode and, how to craft the characters and what's the issue of the week, and just building those episodes. And then each of us writers gets assigned an episode to carry, all the way to the finish line. So we're working collaboratively like that until somebody sort of takes what we've written on the board and goes off to make it a story area or an outline or a script. So we were doing that. I was doing that all day, every weekday. And now that we're on strike, it's completely different. So I am what's called a captain. So that basically, I'm a WGA captain, which basically means that I have stepped up to take responsibility for a couple of things. Number one, I email a group of writers every week. I've been assigned, I have the writers on my show. There are 10 of us. And then there are 20 other writers, most of whom I don't know, that I've been assigned from the union. And I email them updates about what's going on, my experience on the picket line, inviting them to come out, keeping them informed as to what's happening every week. And then also, once we started picketing, the union sent out an email asking us, what studios are we close to? And I picked two. I picked Sony and Amazon, which is in Culver City here, and I'm closest to those two studios. And so they assigned me to Amazon. So I'm not only a captain for this group of 30 writers, but I'm also a captain at Amazon, which means there are about 20 of us or so. And that means that I go out and I'm part of the organizing team for that location, about where we put the cones so we turn around, and handing out signs or dealing with traffic flow or those sorts of things. And we have a sign-up sheet. So every week we sign up for different shifts. We're out there. We've been asked to be out there. I'm out there 3 days a week, three picket sessions a week that I sign up for. And I go out and I help with whatever the organization. Plus I'm also, picketing around, walking around the building and talking with other people and basically supporting the efforts of the strike. So I'm doing that 3 days a week, and it's good. We're fighting the good fight, and it's a lot. It's a little bit exhausting and hard to do other things on the way after I come back home, and it's a lot.
What is that social climate like on the picket line?
Well, the social climate is amazing. I'm glad you asked that question, because the truth is, it's the best networking you can imagine. I was out there today. I was out there today for a couple of hours, and I walked around with a showrunner who I'd never met before, a woman named Nicole Yorkin. You can look up her credits. I saw Damon Lindelof, who, a lot of people know from Lost and, a bunch of different shows. I saw him out there. I've talked with him before. There are all sorts of people, from people who've just joined the union to people who are basically famous showrunners, to members of the negotiating committee who are in the room talking to the AMPTP. We're now out there with the actors. The Screen Actors Guild is also striking, has been out there with us. So just meeting everybody, you see celebrities, you see, there are all kinds of people who are out there, directors, and so in that way, it's really great, because it feels like there's such a feeling of unity, with our 98% strike vote that we put in, and SAG-AFTRA did something similar. People understand that this is a big change, this is a big moment, and it's important for us to be out there in solidarity and to be fighting for the changes that we need to have in order to make a living.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned SAG, because my family doesn't know much about the film industry, just besides what they watch on TV, besides my god sister, but I feel like my family wasn't aware of it and didn't care until SAG got involved because you're watching your favorite TV shows, you don't know who the writers are, but you recognize your favorite actors. Did
Yes.
SAG joining the fight make a difference socially or like on a social media um angle? So,
Yeah, I mean, I think all of the above. One of the things is, I think, your family is not unusual. So most of us who are watching TV, we're obviously connected to the actors. One of my mother's favorite shows is The Equalizer, and she loves Queen Latifah. And it's different when Queen Latifah is walking on the line than the people who are behind the scenes writing that show, who nobody knows. The general public doesn't know who they are. So that actually has definitely changed things. I think the press got different. There were more articles. There were quite a few times out there you'll see people who, camera crews and photographers taking pictures of the lines, and when the celebrities are out there, when the cast of whatever it is, Ted Lasso or any number of shows, when they're out there, people are really interested in that, and that helps. Yeah, and some people say the picket line has gotten a lot better looking. I take a little bit of offense to that, but it's exciting. I feel like it builds the momentum to have another union out there, and I think it really tells the public. Everybody I know who I talk to about the strike, everybody I know has been 100% behind us and understands. I mean, this is what's happening, across the world in terms of unions and management and, labor workers and, the 1%, the people who want to sort of keep all of the money rather than giving it to the workers. This has been happening all over the world. That's why we've been hearing about all these other strikes, whether it's airline workers or teachers or janitors, or it's happening all the time. And I think people really get it, and on some level they get it more because the actors are out there with us, and I think that's a good thing.
did that change anything on the negotiation side?
No, I don't think it has. I mean, the actors got to a point. I'm also in Screen Actors Guild, so when I go out there to the picket line, one of the first things we do is we sign in with our union card at the table. And so I sign in at the Writers Guild table, and I put on a name tag. Sometimes I'll grab a sign, and then I'll walk down the block to the SAG-AFTRA table, and I'll sign in at the SAG-AFTRA table as well. So, I do the double sign in, which I'm really proud of. But the AMPTP, SAG-AFTRA hit a wall with them too, in terms of what they're asking for, and then the AMPTP wasn't negotiating with anybody. They did not come back to the table for either union. For us, we went on strike on May 1st. May 2nd was our first day of our strike. The AMPTP didn't come back to the table till August. So they were just like not talking to us at all. They were talking to SAG-AFTRA for a while. And now they're in a conversation with us that has halted because they need to come back and say some more stuff. We're waiting for them to hear responses from them for our latest counter. They need to sort of come back and respond, and they haven't done it, but they're engaging with us and not engaging with SAG-AFTRA. So, it's a little bit odd, because the truth is they could be doing all of it at once. While they were not talking to us, they were talking to the Canadian writers and made a deal, I believe, with the Canadian writers. So it's possible for them to be talking to more than one group at a time, but they seem to not be doing that at the moment.
Okay. So I have a very specific question that I want to make sure I say properly. The overlap between SAG and WGA demand. Oh goodness. What is the overlap between the SAG and WGA demands, and any distinctions you may have noticed between their demands, particularly those that suggest anything about the potential resolution of the strikes?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky because what we have in common is, the same employment group and the same philosophy of us having a living wage and these companies saying no. But the things that we're asking for are significantly different. One of the things you've heard about is we've talked about, artificial intelligence and our concern that if the companies use that, it's another way for them to eliminate more writers, which we're not interested in, because our whole thing is about making a living wage and creating space for the future, right? So that's a very specific use of artificial intelligence that we are not in favor of. The actors have a different space. You probably also heard one of the things that's gone on with them is that there was a proposal that the AMPTP wanted to, record an actor once on one day and pay them for one day's work as an extra background on a piece, and then be able to use them in perpetuity without ever either telling the actor what they were putting that actor in or paying the actor a penny more beyond that one day. So that's outrageous, right? And so on some level, we both have these issues with artificial intelligence, and at the same time, they're very different issues. So I don't actually think there's a lot of overlap, but there's the unitedness, in the fact that we're dealing with the same intransigent companies that, sort of refuse to share the wealth, essentially. I mean, you look at these CEOs with their billion-dollar salaries, it's illogical. We've co-created all of the material that makes that billion-dollar salary possible, and yet they're not interested in sharing the wealth on that front, and that's a problem.
Is it a flat refusal? Do they have reasons, or?
Well, yes, and yes. So for many things, as I understand it, I'm not in those rooms, I'm not on the negotiating committee, but for many things, it is a flat refusal. For other things, though, there's the philosophy, quite often we have talked about in the WGA, we've talked about the AMPTP playbook, which essentially has been the same for years. And one of the things that they are fond of saying is that they don't have the money. This is not a good time, and you can look at the, in the Wall Street Journal, in the financial pages, you can see how these companies are struggling. Part of that now is the strike, because they're, all of this money is being spent, during this time. They're not able to put new material on the air and all of that stuff. But part of the issue with that is that if the system is broken, if the system is broken for the companies, then the companies should fix the system. It's not our fault. It's not the writer's fault or the actor's fault that the company is not doing well. Then if the company's not doing well and they can't afford to be in business, they should get out of business. But as long as they're in business and that business is created on the backs of, writers like me, actors like, whoever, then it only makes sense for us to be compensated for, making them millionaires.
Yeah. So how long do you think this may continue? Do you know?
Yeah, right. Well, this is so interesting because I have no idea. Nobody knows. It's all day by day. But every third day or so, all the writers that I know, we gather and we're like, okay, what do you think? We start taking bets and, making up dates. And, some people are like, oh, well, October. And some people are like, oh, it's tomorrow. Or, oh, there's absolutely no way to know what's going to happen. Here's the thing. This is the other thing that I think is really interesting from the writer's side. If you think about, and, this, I can't be super precise because every television show is different. But in the scheme of TV, if you look at a pie chart, it's not like, you think about all the things that these companies spend money on in terms of a television show. Spending money on sets, they're spending money on costumes, they're spending money on personnel, they're spending money on locations, they're spending money on, actors, they're spending money on, all sorts of things, rights, advertising, lighting, whatever it is. The amount of money they spend on writers for a given show is a very small percentage already in the scheme of things.
Yeah.
right? So I've heard it quoted, and of course, again, I can't be precise because every TV show is different. But let's say, for example, 6%, let's say 6% of some budget, some TV show budget goes to the writers. It doesn't make any kind of logical sense then for these companies to blame financial challenges on that 6%, because they're spending so much money on so many other things. It's like, what are you talking about? So how is it that you can't, increase the percentage, give a little more money to the writers when there are all these other things that they're paying for? So on the one hand, like if the business model doesn't work, they should get out of the business. But while they're in the business and while we are supporting them in the business by creating the material, we're just asking for fair compensation. The other thing that is true that we know is that it would only take 2% of the profits of all these companies to give us everything that we have on our list. Just 2%. Meanwhile, they're losing whatever millions of dollars, not saying yes or not coming back to the table, when they could have, for some fraction of that, they could have solved this already, weeks ago, months ago. So, I mean, that's stubbornness. That is them posturing. That's them, trying to prove something rather than choosing to be good stewards and good collaborators, in this world that we've created together.
Yeah, that's actually kind of crazy. I didn't know that it would take so little to fix the problem.
It's so little. Yeah.
That's insane. So I have another because I'm a film student. Most of my friends are film students. And we're a little scared. Our parents are a little scared. They're already like, why would you go to school for film? And now it looks like the we're going into is maybe falling apart. So our question is, what can recent or upcoming graduates and other aspiring entertainment workers do to develop and further their careers right now without negatively impacting solidarity with WGA and SAG and all the negative future repercussions that might come from violating the terms of the strike?
Yes. So violating the terms of the strike is a no-go, because clearly if you scab, if you do work that would be union work if the union workers were working, not only is that a bad look for you, but certainly if you try to do that and then a year later, when all this is solved, whenever this is solved, you try to get a job as a WGA writer, you're not going to get into the union. And I'm sure that that's the same with SAG-AFTRA. Like, there's just you can't, play under the table now, but then hope to be, in the group later on. So that's a non-starter and something that nobody should do. But I think there are things you can do. One of them is to keep yourself informed, this conversation, but there are also a ton of articles. You can follow what's going on. Now, I have to say, you got to read articles with a grain of salt, because some of the entertainment industry newspapers are owned by companies that do business with the AMPTP, and sometimes you can't always trust what you read in the papers and all that stuff. But you can keep yourself informed. If you're able to, and you're near either New York or LA, or sometimes I know that there have been pickets in other cities like Atlanta or DC, like, go out to the picket line. Again, the networking is off the hook. So it's entirely possible for you to, literally to like go out, walk next to, I don't know, Damon Lindelof or Quinta Brunson and, chat with that person on a day and then end up with this amazing job. I mean, obviously, nobody's going to guarantee that you're going to instantly get a job if you run into Quinta Brunson. But, it's a great chance to do it, great chance to go out and support people and actually meet the people who are making the shows that you're interested in. I was actually, as I mentioned to you earlier, I was walking just today with Nicole Yorkin, who is a WJ writer, and her writing partner was out there too. And we were sharing stories about the work that we've done. And she's on the negotiating committee and she's on the board, and she's a pretty heavy hitter. But I had never had a conversation with her. as I was talking to her, she had an overall deal at Netflix. She brought Netflix 5 shows, 4 of which they picked up. She's a showrunner. All of these things that I didn't know. And if I'm meeting these people every day who are working on things and getting to know me, and then, hopefully will remember me in the future, who knows, about my work with that person or your work with that person. So I feel like the notion of there's real value in being out there. And there's also real value in support. Like if you ever have the opportunity, if you're in New York or LA, buy a box of cookies and take them down to the WGA table or the SAG-AFTRA table, buy some empanadas and, get a group of your friends together and pay for a food truck. These are things that people are doing to support. And then there are also these funds where writers and support staff are really looking to, a lot of us are on unemployment or are struggling now, not making a living. And there's something called the Entertainment Community Fund, where you can make donations to a pool of money that's going to support staff. And there are a bunch of different organizations like that you can donate to. All of those things, I think, both karmically and practically, can be really good investments for the future.
Okay, so should we be, in addition to supporting in those ways, should we be looking for work outside of the industry for this moment in time?
Well, I think 2 things. Number one, look, if you're a director, directors can still work. Directors have an agreement. So if you're a director, you can apprentice with a director, and some of those programs are still being made. It depends. Like it's tough now because actors are out, but there are certain shows that have been blessed to actually film now. So that's an opportunity if you find yourself in the directing space, being able to apprentice or that sort of thing. It's perfectly fine for you to make your own material. What the WGA and SAG-AFTRA don't want you to do is create material that is then going to be a feeder to one of these struck companies. But if you're making your own short film, if you get together with people and you make your own web series or whatever, like if you give yourself the opportunity to create material that then can be seen as a calling card later on, that's absolutely perfectly fine to do. And you can even, depending, if you have questions about how that works with a particular project for whatever reason, you can always call SAG-AFTRA, local SAG-AFTRA office, or call the WGA and talk to them about what you can do, what you can't do, and get their direct advice about whatever project you're attempting, and let them tell you exactly what you can do. But there are certainly things that you can do creatively, right now. And I think it's a great idea to continue that kind of practice.
Okay, because I definitely, when this is over, need to work on my senior project. And I emailed Professor Gosshorn over the summer about this. Preparing for senior project, I was like, well, can I do a festival run with the strike going on? Like, what can I do with my work? But
yes. Well, again, it depends. Again, when in doubt, you can reach out to the unions to get the skinny. But here's the basics. If you're going to create something, let's say a short film, and enter it into a festival, and that festival has nothing to do with a struck company, you can go ahead and do that, right? Of course, you want to get the blessing to make sure that you're in the right and all that stuff. I can't generally advise people, over video like this, but, it's possible. What you don't want to do is, and it may not be this obvious, so you probably have to do a little research, but if you create your short film and you enter it into like the Netflix Georgia Film Festival, like clearly Netflix is involved, they're a struck company, you can't do that. You can't do that without some sort of repercussion down the line. So you don't want to be part of a festival, part of a process, part of an opportunity that's connected to any of these struck companies, ABC, NBC, there are a whole bunch of them. But you can do things that, if it's a festival that doesn't have any connection, and the series of festivals that don't have any connection, that's fair game.
Okay. So thank you. That helps me personally tremendously.
Good.
So I know this is more about writing, but I do have a god sister. She's very, very young, and she's working with independent filmmakers Right now, she's a little actress. But her mom is wondering for herself and for other child actors, how can parents protect their child's future? How do they stay informed?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I think the best thing you can do, I would imagine, as the parent of a child who's in the industry is to be there, meet everybody, see what's going on, be on set, be a fixture in the experience, and learn, be there and ask questions, be there as a supervisor, be there and advocate for your child, and also talk to other people who are and have been, in the trenches doing this sort of thing. I also know that the SAG-AFTRA has something called the Coogan Fund, where you can, it's money, it's a space where you can put money and, keep it for your child. The details on that, you'll have to go to SAG-AFTRA to find out. But in other words, there are things in place, safeguards in place, to keep young people protected and safe. And I think it's about, adults doing the research to find out what those are, and then beginning to lean into those processes to make sure that the child is doing well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And for people who do not have aspirations of careers that fit within SAG or WGA, does crossing a picket line matter for them?
It's a great question. Look, I think crossing a picket line always matters. And I think that, part of the question is, what is it that you want to do and where do you want to be? An interesting thing happened. One of the things that's in the evolution of our strike is that, the Teamsters are the folks who drive the trucks that carry all the stuff that productions need in order to do television shows and films. And here in Los Angeles, the leaders of the Teamsters made the decision that they were not going to cross our picket lines. Now, I believe that some Teamsters ended up crossing our picket lines, and so that meant a couple of things. Number one, if there was a picket line there, the Teamster was supposed to, and in most cases did, turn around and not deliver those materials to a particular show. And in that way, that sometimes that meant that, in the early days of the strike, it's not happening so much now because there's so little production here in Los Angeles. But in the early days of the strike, we would find out about it on a captain's thread, or somebody would email or text and say, oh my God, so-and-so, this production is happening at Fox at 5 a.m. is where when we hear people will be getting there. And a handful of at least 2 people with picket signs would go out and be there at 5 a.m. And if the Teamster drove up and there were at least 2 people walking, they would turn around. And we effectively shut down a number of productions because the Teamsters refused to cross our picket lines. So we just had to make sure the picket lines were there. So there are other unions that are supporting us. I mean, we've had support from so many unions across Los Angeles, so many different unions, SEIU, and we've seen the Democratic Socialists out supporting us, and there have been a whole bunch of people and a whole bunch of politicians as well. So there are other people who are not in our union who are supporting us and who won't cross picket lines. And I think that's great. It really helps us out. Again, though, if what you want to do as a student of film, as a person who wants to be a director or an actor or a writer, you can still practice those things. You can still write your stuff. You can still make a short film. You can still, you want to make a short film and you can't afford to do it on your own. You can still crowdfund. You can do everything you can do except cross a picket line and sell that piece to a struck company or send it to a festival that is for a struck company. You can even meet with agents. So, if there are agents out there, who you're interested in and can connect with, you're allowed to do that. What you're not allowed to do is, you can meet an agent and that agent could decide to represent you. But what you're not allowed to do is talk with that agent about selling something of yours to some company. Like once you cross over into like, now we're talking about my pilot would be good for Netflix and how do we, like that's the no-go area. So, but if you're, if you're coming out of school or if you have a connection with somebody and you want to try to make some professional connection that way and with an agent or a manager, you can certainly do that as long as those people are not actively selling your work to one of these struck companies. The idea, when we started this, and which continues today, is that creatively, the creative well should run dry. There should be, there should be nothing flowing toward these companies. And so that's the goal. But as long as you're avoiding that, again, if you have questions, call your local WGA or SAG office, and they'll tell you point blank, happy to take calls. People are super friendly. But that's basically what you can do and what you can't do.
So if the strike is effective in running the creative well dry, people who are aspiring to work below the line are also going to be affected.
Yes, and they already are. And these things, again, I'm super grateful for their support. And these same mechanisms that are supporting us, like the Entertainment Community Fund, which I mentioned before, those same organizations are giving money and grants and supportive, financial instruments to people, those people too. The people on our show, as I said, we have 10 writers, but we also have, I think, 4 or 5 assistants, and none of those assistants are in the WGA. Some of them are in IATSE, which is another union. Some of them are not unionized at all. Those people are affected because their bread and butter was coming out of supporting us, and so yes, costumers and lighting people and grips and, all those people are absolutely affected. Not only those people, but certainly, with production shutdown, hotel workers and restaurants and all of these places that support the machine of what we do that are now not, caterers and, those people, prop houses and, those people are all affected. And so, the more we can do with supporting these organizations to support those people as well, that's really the name of the game as well.
That is so, I never occurred to me that like caterers are being affected by this.
Yeah. And so that's why one of the things that's happening when I said to you, and it seems a little sort of, and who knows whether anybody, you guys could do it as students, but when I said like, pay for a food truck to come down for the day to the picket line, that's a real thing that people are doing. Colleagues of mine are, it's a way to give, work to those people on a given day, have them come down to, Universal Studios and, feed those people, I'll pay you for the day, that sort of thing. It's like another way to like give back to these people who are supporting us. And a lot of these people have restaurants that are not doing great and they get to advertise, they get to come out, they get to, feed people, and it's a good thing all around. That's another thing that's happening out here too that makes a difference.
Cool.
Yeah.
So my last big question is, I'm very interested in the strike because, as I said earlier, I want to be a writer, and so what happens will affect my future, I'm sure.
Yes. Yes.
But there are yet still people who do not feel like this is their business. How can I encourage those people to be interested and then show their solidarity?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, I think it's not rocket science in a way. Like we all have the experience of, and I do this too, I go to my local grocery store and, there are cashiers and there's self-checkout, right? All of the self-checkout things, they are designed for convenience, but also designed so that the grocery store can have fewer checkout people, right? So we're seeing the same kind of thing where technology is replacing people in other industries, right? We've seen this for years, whether it's, there are fewer assistants, but more people, dictating into, AI, or the way we use, whatever it is, whatever, I'm not going to say her name because I have one in the office, but one of those programs that where you say, hey, blah, 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 we've seen that. And I'm not saying we need to demonize that everywhere, but this is the kind of thing that's happening where corporations are saying more technology, fewer people. And that is universal. That's something that's happening to everybody in so many sectors, in factories. And, we've got these self-driving cars in San Francisco, like where you don't have to hire an Uber, there's no person in the Uber. Like, that's just insane.
Yeah.
So I think this thing that's happening where big business wants to squeeze out human beings, make more money, have less people, if that continues, I imagine, we're just going to have a whole bunch of homeless creatives and technicians and painters. And, if everything is AI, then where's the human element? If everything's created by machine, then, we're going to have a lot more homeless people and a lot more aimless people and a lot more frightened and lonely people. And that's a thing I think everybody should be concerned about. Everybody should be thinking about that and how that impacts, if you're not going to be in the entertainment industry, how does this impact your industry? Because, if these companies can find a way for this to work, they're going to find a way for it to work in other industries, and just more and more and more, so that just a handful of people make a lot of money and other people are dead broke. That's really what we're up against. It's really that philosophy. And I think that concerns everybody.
Definitely can't believe this is my young adult years. It's actually insane. But is there anything that you wish we knew as aspiring film professionals?
Yeah, I do. I think that with the 98% vote, the solidarity out there between the unions, I feel like artists, this is a moment where, artists in this industry are really supporting each other and really, chipping in and cheering each other on, and recognizing the value of what we do and wanting to make it, safe and good and lucrative and viable in the future for all of you folks. So I feel like that's the thing. Like, this is, I'm one of these, and I'll say this here, like, I'm one of these very fortunate people. I've risen the ranks in the television industry. I'm a co-executive producer on the show that I'm on. I'm really grateful for that. I've got money in the bank. Like, I'm not struggling in this moment, but I'm doing this. I'm out there 3 days a week and writing my 30 people and helping organize the picket line and here talking to you, because it's really about the next generation. It's really about you guys, especially for me, especially like the people of color, the diverse folks, the queer and the trans folks, the disabled folks, like everybody who's been othered. Like, I'm here for you. And so this is about the future. And I think that's, on some level, like, all of us united for the future. Like, that's a really good thing. I feel like that's exciting and that's hopeful. And I feel it every day when I'm out there, even though, we're all tired and it's dire circumstances on some level. I think we know it's the future, and also the chance out there to have these conversations with people. There are people out there who just joined the union. They just got their first job and we went on strike. There's a woman in my writer's room for whom that's the case, and I've talked to some writers who've been on like one show, or, and to be able to mentor them and encourage them. And, that's really what it's about.
Well, I say thank you as part of the next generation, personally and deeply. Thank you for talking to me, being open and free and willing to talk to me, and the work that you're doing that I'm not in a position to do, because me as a teen entering college would have been all about a strike, but I have to watch and support in other ways. Well, not just as a teen, me now would be, but right. I'm not there. And as I seek union membership and as I seek jobs, I'm grateful for you and everybody that is working so hard to keep our future possible, so I don't have to go get a different undergrad degree in
Yeah.
a couple of years. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate your appreciation, and I'm cheering you on and looking forward to what you create, and fighting the good fight to make this a better place to do it.
Thank you. Well, that's all I have.